Hello and welcome to today's video. So last week I posted a video and I did a Funko Pop base for a little T-Rex figurine because he wasn't standing very well. And I had a lot of fun doing that, and I thought it was neat to add kind of a diorama element to, a collectible figurine. And I thought it'd be fun to do some more, so I was looking around my cave and noticed my little Loyal Subjects Masters of the Universe figures. And I've been wanting to make some stuff for these guys for a while now, so I thought I would start off by just doing like a little dungeon display stand for a couple of the figures. Now these figures don't have any problems standing, so I don't need to worry about, doing indentions in the base like I did with the Funko Pop one. I just want to have something that kind of enhances where they're sitting at on my shelf. Alright, so we're going to get started on the dungeon base for these Loyal Subjects Masters of the Universe figurines. I have my two figures here, so that way I can make sure my base is big enough. And then I have this piece of white paper that seemed to work pretty well for both of them to stand on. So I want to make sure that my base is at least that wide. It doesn't have to be that deep, but I want it to at least be that wide. Now I'm just softening up some black Primo, and I'm going to roll it out and get it roughly into a rectangular shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I want it to be pretty close to just being a nice rectangle. And so I just cut off some excess. I'm working on the edges. I'm going to take a ruler here and kind of just straighten those out a little bit. And now that I'm done working with the black clay, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands before I start working on the clay for the stones. Now the stones, I want them to be a little bit lighter than this gray granite, so I'm going to mix some white Primo clay in there. That'll lighten that up quite a bit. And once I'm happy with how that's mixed up, I'm going to go ahead and start sculpting out some little stones to lay down for the dungeon floor. Now, I don't want these to be symmetrical. I don't want them to look like they're manufactured. I just want them to be like random stones that they, dug out of the ground and maybe cut up into different things to tile their dungeon floor. Who knows how Beastman and Skeletor would make a dungeon, but this is how I'm making it for them. I figured it's not going to be all uniform. So once I have several of them rolled out, I'm going to go ahead and place them. I do want to put a little bit of a gap in there, but I'm going to kind of squish them down later, get them to kind of blend in a little bit better, but I want, to have some gap in between the stones right now. And then those little gaps that are kind of at the corners and other edges that are just a little bit odd sizes, I'm just taking some small bits of clay and adding it. And now I'm just going to go ahead and finish up this area. And I want to do a little section just left of what I've got done and have it be kind of like a hole in the floor where I can have a creature coming out of. So I started off doing these little stones, and I wasn't happy with how it looked, so I want to go ahead and I'm going to add another bigger stone, and I thought I would do the bigger stones and then add the little stones on top of that, give it a little bit more depth and a little trip hazard for He-Man as he's walking through the dungeon. So I'm going to finish up the stones around what's going to be my hole in the dungeon floor, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut out the pieces for the little stones, and then go ahead and finish up the stones on the rest of the dungeon floor. But I wanted to make sure I had enough pieces left over for my little stones. But as I go through, I'm just going to keep covering up the black Primo with some different stone shapes, work in some smaller pieces to cover up those gaps in between, and get all of this covered up nicely so we have a nice full dungeon floor. With the black clay covered, I'm going to go ahead and use the ball tool to add some more texture to my stone tiles. Now I decided I want the front of the base to look a little more finished. So I'm just making some small, narrow stone tiles to cover up that black clay and just give it a nice finished look on the front. Now with that done, I think this will work for my characters. Finish up that. I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands again because I'm going to switch over to some silver Primo clay for some bars. So I thought this opening in the floor would look a little bit better if I added some metal bars to go across, kind of keep our monster down in the farther depths of the dungeon. So I'm just measuring out my opening, putting my silver bars in there, and I thought I would have the next set go the other direction and have them go across. So I went ahead and cut those, but then I felt like they stuck up too high. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those off and cut them into smaller pieces and have them be on the same level as the other bars and make kind of a grate. So I'm going to do a kind of a metal grate. It's a little more work, but I feel like it was worth it to give the look that I wanted. So sometimes you want to spend that extra time on something just to get it just how you're, envisioning it in your head. So as I finish this up, I'm going to get all these little pieces cut right to the perfect size so they'll fit in there. Then I use a small ball tool to attach the new pieces to the existing bars. None of this clay is baked, so it's going to blend right in there really nice. I've got one little section left to do, so I'll trim that down, make a little spot for it, add it, and smooth in the edges to get it to attach to the other bars that are there. Alright, I'm pretty happy with how that looks, so now I'm going to move on and add my little stones around the grate. Again, this is our trip hazard for He-Man as he's strolling through the dungeon not paying attention. So we've got these little stones. I just want to have them go all the way around, and I'm putting them in just a little bit towards that opening, and that way it'll cover up where those bars are, so it looks like they're kind of coming out from underneath, and you don't see that edge where they connect to that stone underneath. Now I'm just going to go through and finish that up. Just got a few more to touch up there. And add a little bit of texture with my ball tool so it kind of matches the rest. I got my figures on there. They still stand okay. Now I want to go through and fill in any gaps that I feel like are too big and too much of the black is showing through. I want the black to be visible in some areas, but I don't want it to dominate the piece when you're looking at it. And I might even do some if I choose like even a darker gray with a brown underneath so that it just looks like it's dirty in between the crevices. But I thought for this first one, this would work out fine. So I'm just going to finish up. I've got so many of these little sections to get filled in. So I'm just going to get those all done. Now that I'm happy with how my stones look, I'm going to go ahead and go over them with this larger ball tool, and I'm just pounding the heck out of it. I want these stones to spread out, cover in or fill in some more of those spaces in between them, and give it a nice finished look. I think I'm happy with how the dungeon floor looks now, so I'm going to start working on my little dungeon monster. And I can't do a lot with the space I have, but I thought it'd be cool to have some tentacles reaching out of the hole in the dungeon floor, and I thought tentacles would work well because they could pass through those openings in that grate. And, I might for another one do some kind of grate that's busted open, or do something a little bit different, but for this one, this worked to have these coming out in between those openings. And I'm just using some foil rolled up, and then I take my ball tool, make an indentation for that tentacle to rest on so it doesn't get any of that, like any kind of texture from the foil. And I just thought it'd be neat to have a couple of the tentacles more elevated and give them some more motion. And if you notice, I have them all going to the right because that's where I want He-Man to stand. and it's like Beastman's commanding them to attack him. Well, all right, I think that looks pretty good for that. So I'm going to clean up my desk and get this guy on a pan and go ahead and bake him according to package instructions. And then we'll take a look at the finished piece. And here is the finished kind of diorama type base for my Loyal Subjects Masters of the Universe figurines. So you can see here, bring it in a little bit closer, you can see the detail and the stonework. I really like how this turned out. I like doing the different size stones. Seems a more natural fitting for, I don't want to say time period because it's, you know, kind of a fantasy sci-fi, but I think things in the fantasy element of Masters of the Universe isn't going to be manufactured, so they're just going to get whatever stones they can to build it, especially if it's something for like Beastman or something where, you know, he seems to lead more towards the fantasy element of it than if it was something by like Man-at-Arms. But I've got several of these figurines, not just these two, so I would definitely like to make some more bases for them and maybe even kind of put them all in a row, have them kind of go together. But I'll just see what I, you know, end up doing. I also have some other figurines that I wouldn't mind making some kind of diorama base for. So once you look at the bottom side, it's just that flat black, but it worked to kind of build upon. And that way, any spots where the stones didn't connect all the way, it gave me that black shadow in there. You see, I did the stone work on the front to cover up that black. On the side, it's not, but it still has a nice look to it. So even if, you know, this was sitting on the shelf, and you caught it from an angle, it would still look, you know, decent in a finished piece of artwork. So I'm just going to set it back down. We'll bring in our figurines here. We have the evil Beastman. Kind of get him standing on there like he's commanding the tentacles. And our heroic He-Man, getting ready to fight Beastman and the tentacles. So it'd be fun to do all kinds of different things with these guys. I could even do, you know, some of them that have a wall background, or I could make some separate walls and put up behind it. They don't have to necessarily be connected, as long as I made a way for them to stand upright. Well, if you have suggestions for other types of action figure, toy, collectible diorama bases, please leave it in the comments down below. I'd love to know what other people are interested in seeing. And if you have any ideas for any other videos, you can leave those down in the comments down below as well. Also, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel. I post new videos weekly. I also do live streams weekly. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and remember, never stop creating. Bye!
We've got you now, He-Man.